and look for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Right. Hold on just a second there. Do we have any, Larry, do we have anybody to from the public to talk about the agenda? Larry? Larry, any public comment on the agenda?
Sir, no comments on the agenda.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's do a roll call on this. And I guess, Kristen, you want to do the roll call for us?
I think Jen, you should be able to.
Jen, you want to do that?
Yeah.
Unmuting myself, I apologize.
Okay.
All right, so let me. Okay, so I think as far as, sorry, I'm scanning everything to see if there's anyone else who needs in. So, and this is new to me. I don't usually do public meetings. So for the roll call, do you want me to, am I just looking at the committee members?
Just call the roll of the committee members and then we'll vote yay or nay.
All right, perfect. So I see Commissioner Wells, Commissioner Ward, Commissioner Wheeler, Commissioner Hayes-Santos, and Commissioner Byerly.
So if you'll just call us each one and give us a chance to respond.
I apologize.
It's okay, no worries.
Commissioner Ward.
Aye.
Commissioner Wheeler.
Present.
Commissioner Byerly.
I'm sorry, what are we voting on? Or are we
the agenda? The agenda.
I support the agenda. Aye.
Commissioner Wells.
Here.
And Commissioner Hayes-Santos.
Aye, but I think we had 2 votes that weren't yea or nay though. That need to be.
Yeah,
Yay.
Commissioner Wheeler, Commissioner Wells, we would do a yay or nay.
I got the yay.
Commissioner Wells?
Yay.
Okay. All right, we have an agenda. All right, Jen, did you want to introduce the first item for us? The only item.
Yes, so we did break this up into 2 sections for the first item, but the very first one we're going to go through is the county will present the proposed resolution for creation of a climate change citizen committee. And I believe, Stephen, are you leading that discussion?
That'll be starting with me, actually.
Forrest, oh, sorry. Thank you, Forrest. I will pass it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jen. I appreciate that. Thank you, commissioners, and good afternoon. My name is Forrest Edelton, and I'm a senior planner with the County Environmental Protection Department, and I'm also a former planner with the City of Gainesville. As Jen said, I'm going to start off with a presentation that is focused on our proposed Citizen Climate Crisis Advisory Committee, and then I'll be turning it over to EPD Director Steve Hofstetter and Strategic Initiatives Manager Sean McClendon and Solid Waste Director Gus Olmos for a follow-up part of that. So with that, I'll go ahead and get into it and start sharing my screen here. And it should be up now.
It is.
Thank you. So the Joint Water Policy Committees has requested that staff from the county, city, and GRU present a briefing or status report on climate change initiatives to date. And I'll be presenting some of that material for the county. And as I said, Sean and Steve and Gus will be joining me. And typically this type of presentation lends itself to moving along in a chronological order. However, the Board of County Commissioners have made some parallel or related requests of staff, and we believe it'd be beneficial to talk about those things at the same time. So rather than begin with the past and work our way forward, we'll be beginning with the future and county staff's recommendations for the Joint Water Policy Committee moving forward on climate change. So the first recommendation is to create a Climate Crisis Advisory Committee. And that name, of course, can be changed, but this is what we've moved forward with just in the discussions among staff. The second recommendation would be to strengthen climate change policies and the comprehensive plan for both the city and the county, and to develop and implement a local climate mitigation and resilience plan or adaptation plan. We've also heard this called a climate action plan. So you'll see those same phrases used for this larger plan to deal with climate change. And then the final recommendation is to collaborate with other local, regional, state, and federal initiatives. So these recommendations were largely directives given to staff by the county commission. And to that end, we believe that the best way to start achieving a greater collaboration is to bring these recommendations to this body and incorporate the JWPC in the policy and decision-making process. So the greater goal, of course, is to develop a more unified approach to addressing climate change between the city, the county, GRU, and the municipalities. The most important step in developing a more unified approach is to bring in the citizen participation in a collaborative way. So staff recommends the creation of a climate crisis advisory committee. This committee would be made up of climate change focused citizens who would evaluate and advise on climate related policies and proposals. More specifically, staff is proposing that the Climate Crisis Advisory Committee provide input on changes to comprehensive plan policies and the development of the local mitigation and adaptation or resilience plan that we mentioned earlier. So this graphic, I know it can seem sort of complicated. There's a lot of arrows, but I'll go through it here. And I think hopefully it will make sense and make itself clear as I go through it. So this shows where we're proposing the Climate Crisis Advisory Committee dovetail with existing boards, plans, and programs. In the middle, you'll see the advisory committee here. And it's acting as a sort of hub for climate change policy. They inform both the city and the county, or through the Joint Water Policy Committee. So this advisory committee will also evaluate the yet to be developed climate action plan or the local mitigation and adaptation plan. And this plan will also in turn influence and inform the comprehensive plans for both the city and the county, and then capital improvement projects, land development code, and other codes. So in your backup material, you should have received two different drafts of proposed resolutions. One came out later after the original agenda went out. And these are proposing the creation of the Climate Advisory Committee. One of the drafts suggests that the city and the county commission select the members of the Climate Advisory Committee.
Forrest, we're having trouble hearing you when you get closer to the bike there.
Sorry, where did you hear me last?
We're okay. It just started to get a little quiet. So
okay, thank you. So just the resolutions. You received two proposed resolutions. One would have the city and the county commission select the advisory members. The other resolution, which staff is recommending, would have the Joint Water Policy Committee select the members of the advisory committee. Both of the drafts that we included in the materials are worded so that they refer to the county. But our recommendation would be that county commissioners and city commissioners would take this back to their commission and pass similar resolutions that also create the Climate Advisory Committee and give the Joint Water Policy Committee the ability to select the members. So what we're asking the JWPC today is whether it will accept the responsibilities and duties as described in the proposed resolution. And we're recommending that the JWPC members request that their commissions pass resolutions establishing the Citizen Climate Advisory Committee as described. So we have a sort of built-in pause here. If it serves you to discuss this portion of it, the Citizens Advisory Committee, we can pause, or we can go ahead and move with the rest of the county presentation.
Let's pause for a moment. I'd like to hear the thoughts of the members on this at this point. Commissioner Santos, looks like you're up.
Thank you, Chair Ward. I was looking at the backup and I see the one that has the county and the city appointing them, not this board appointing them?
That's all I had as well.
Okay. Is it possible to have that emailed out? Or do you have that? What's the difference? Is it only section 2 that is different?
The main difference is that the JWPC selects the members versus the city selecting 4 and the county selecting 5.
Okay, but everything else is the same.
Everything else is virtually the same.
Okay. So yeah, I would be supportive of creating the board and also having this board appointed. I think will be better. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Okay, I would support that as well. I think that's a more logical way to proceed at this point. Okay, if there's no other commission questions or comments,
I'm sorry I'd be so slow,
That's all right.
but I agree. I think that this committee could do that.
Great. Okay. If there are no other comments on this one, we'll move ahead to the next one then, Mr. Edelton.
Okay. Give me just a minute.
Well, while Forrest is getting that up and running, this is Steve Hostetter, Alachua County's Environmental Protection Department Interim Director, and I'm going to start the next presentation. But I think our goal would be to bring this item back to our county commission on July 14th to support the Citizen Climate Advisory Committee. I think our hope is to have both the city and county commissions both support and adopt those resolutions so that we can bring it back and be ready to select members at the August meeting of this board. So if we could have that adoption happen in either June or early July or mid-July, we could advertise the positions and give about a month to have the advertisement open before we have to bring it back to this group in August. So that's kind of our timeline we're focused on.
Commissioner Santos. Get your mute on.
Sorry. Do you want to have a motion to that effect right now, or do you want to wait till later? Okay.
I'd love to hear the motion. Yeah.
So I would move that we have a recommendation from, are we still the Joint Water Policy Committee?
Yeah.
From the Joint Water Policy Committee to both the city and county commissions to adopt the resolution that has the Joint Water Policy Committee meeting selecting its members, and to have that placed on their first meetings in July, or that works?
Is there a second?
Or July 14th meeting for the county commission and July 16th meeting for the city commission.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wells. Okay, anybody want to talk about that? Anyone from the public want to talk about that?
Commissioner, we don't have any comment on that.
Okay, Commissioner Santos, your hand is up.
Yeah, just one more thing. We are a full county, and I don't know if I want to send this out to the other municipalities as well, having them, since they do, in essence, kind of appoint someone to this board as well, but to have all the other municipalities adopt this too, or ask them to kind of have everyone's on board.
I'm sorry, adopt what?
Adopting the resolution for the creation of a climate advisory, since it's not just the city and county on this board, it's also all the other municipalities that are also represented on this board too. Not just have the two of our bodies adopt the resolution, but try to get all of the other municipalities to adopt it too. I don't think we need to stop moving forward because of that, but I think it would be good to have everyone try to be on board.
Right.
I agree.
Okay, so you want to change the motion to that?
Yes.
Okay, and Commissioner Wells, you're good with that?
I'll amend that. Yes.
Very good. Okay. All right. We've given an opportunity for public comment and no other commissioners. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so that's unanimous. Let's move ahead with the presentation. Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner
Santos.
Ward, do we need to do a roll call vote to make sure?
Sure, we can do a roll call.
Jenna,
Laura, you want to call us out one at a time?
I'm happy to. Commissioner Ward,
Thank you. Aye.
Commissioner Wells,
Aye.
Commissioner Wheeler,
Aye.
Commissioner Byerly,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayes Santos.
Aye.
So that's indeed unanimous. Ms. McElroy, just as a heads up, usually we do the what we call the chair last on votes. I know this is the first time you've done this, so I'm not.
I
Okay.
appreciate everyone's patience and grace. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I know you were dropped into this role, so thank you. All right, let's move along with the presentation.
So I believe I'm sharing my screen. Is that
Yes.
everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, Steve, you should be able to
Wallace,
take
I'll
it.
get you in here in just the next available opportunity.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Mute off.
Are we waiting on something else, or are we ready to
Oh,
begin?
go ahead. You're good.
Okay, so the rest of our presentation is a kind of an overview of what the county's been doing in the area of climate change. We're mainly focused on policy creation and where we've come from through our policies and kind of where we're headed. So the whole idea of handling or tackling climate change is very daunting. So to not get overwhelmed with trying to figure out how to best handle climate change, we've broken it down into three large categories: the area of climate mitigation, resilience, and equity and public health concerns. So to kind of give a little background on what we mean by those, I think it's important for the public to understand some of these terms. When we talk about climate mitigation, what we're talking about is ways to reduce our climate emission and our climate footprint. So as we all understand, climate change is being caused by a net increase of greenhouse gases and carbon emissions in our atmosphere. And that's causing glacier melts, permafrost melt, which is leading to sea level rise, as well as the slowing of the Gulf Stream, severe weather conditions, and changing climatic conditions all over the world. So when we talk about climate mitigation, we're talking about ways to shrink our existing carbon emissions and avoid new carbon footprints. With increased population growth, it even becomes more of a challenge. So when we talk about measures of success that are reported like a per capita or per person, to reduce net reduction, that's not going to be an effective way. So we need to tackle it in a very holistic strategy. When we talk about resilience, this is also referred to as adaptation or climate adaptation. That's really talking about how prepared we are going forward and how we're going to handle the impacts of climate change on our community, the environment, water, health, infrastructure, and our economy. To accomplish this, we need to develop an action strategy and implement a plan that prepares us for the most extreme flood and drought impacts we're going to have, improve our infrastructure on how we would build this infrastructure, promote and lead us to strategies for transitioning to clean energy, secure our ability for local foods, protect our water, natural resources, our native soils, and prepares us for new growth and population patterns that are going to be influenced and affected by climate patterns, particularly sea level rise. And then finally, equity and public health. This has been obvious with COVID and the current pandemic we're in. We can anticipate significant impacts on our most vulnerable parts of our community when it comes to climate change. So we need to focus on these health equity issues when dealing with climate. There's going to be segments of our community that will be hit harder than others, and this needs to be a major focus on our action strategies moving forward. And we'll talk more about that as we get into some of the slides. We also need to focus on having strong community engagement and education and collaborate with our health and mental health experts and agencies and our public universities and colleges that we have in our community as well. So if we focus in on, you can go to the next slide, Forrest. If we focus in on some of the areas of climate mitigation, the areas we tend to focus most on is energy, as well as food and environmental footprints. And I'm going to turn this over to Sean McClendon, the County Strategic Initiatives Manager, and he's going to talk about the first four points here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Sean McClendon, again, Alachua County. Part of knowing where you're going is to know where you've been, and a big part of where we've been is generating an energy element. That's really a fundamental part of the County Commission's methodology and policy framework for addressing climate change, but it's not the only mechanism. We find climate policies, both explicit and implicit, throughout the comprehensive plan. For energy conservation, Alachua County does have very specific goals to improve the weatherization and efficiencies of our buildings, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's really important to note that as we look at, say, an objective to 1.1 in the energy element to reduce countywide greenhouse gas emissions, that sets a goal of at 80% from 2009 baseline emissions by 2050. We have to look at what's the outcome of that and what are the measures of success. You're talking about county operations emitting anywhere for around 26,000 tons of CO2 equivalent a year, and community-wide, it varies, but a little over 5 million or more tons of CO2 equivalent a year. So how do we look at success? A lot of what the eventual committee will be doing is, and creating a climate action plan, is looking at the yardsticks that we have in our current comprehensive plan, in our master strategies, and in our action items to tell us, you know, is a movement of 6% of our utility energy usage over a 8-year period from over 100,000 MBTU to 106 MBTU a success? Is that a successful measure? If in the reduction of carbon, we look at what we're doing with encouraging the sequestration practices on both public and private land, and on policy 3.2.1, promoting the retention of sustainable agriculture and the conservation and uses that serve as stable carbon sinks. A big outcome of that is the emphasis on wild places and public spaces. We have over 20,000 acres of land, and increasing, that's protecting critical wetland areas which act as carbon sinks as our community. How do we value that, and what are the thresholds that we need to increase that amount by so that we can stay within our safe climate trajectory? For energy conservation and reducing the necessity for fossil fuels, Alachua County, it's very important. We can't do this alone. For the community policy 2.1.3, counties to work with other local governments, other groups, and organize to develop a community weatherization program to improve energy efficiencies. We need to improve the energy conservation and efficiency in the built environment. The two biggest sectors that we have for emissions, whether community-wide or with county government operations, are the transportation sector and the built environment, and how energy is used inside of them. For 2.1.3, it specifically targets these questions plus the equity issue, those that are most vulnerable. And the way that translates into measures of success is how many people can the city, the county, and GRU help with weatherization practices, whether through education, through low-cost mechanisms to reduce their energy usage that have a stickiness to them, that help over time and keep utility costs down for those entities. For energy conservation as well, in the county government, we're supposed to explore and adopt measures to conserve energy, maximize energy efficiency, and use renewable energy in county facilities, where we weatherize all the county buildings to a greatest extent as possible. Our annual capital improvement plan is supposed to have initiatives that support water and energy conservation utility. We are also supposed to have funds that are recurring through the ECIP to promote solar energy innovation within our existing county buildings. And speaking of solar, in the energy element, objective 5.2, the increase of use of renewable energy in county government buildings. We have an aggressive policy in place. And again, we can't get there on our own. The county's goal by 2030 is that 100% of energy purchased or produced by the county facilities be from solar photovoltaic sources, with an interim target of 50% by 2050. So by 2025, we need to either purchase or produce around 9.5 million kilowatt hours by 2025. And by 2030, we need to purchase or produce approximately 19 million kilowatt hours. That's if our usage stays at a steady state and doesn't improve with greater conservation and efficiency measures. What this translates to for a measure of success then for our community is that we need to grow what we have right now for solar photovoltaic services of about 240 kilowatts in place right now, with an additional 97 kilowatts coming online this year and maybe another 300 in FY21. Right now we're producing about 324,000 kilowatt hours from solar resources on our own, but this only represents about 3% of our total consumption. This committee and what the city and GRU does with its energy profile will influence how we think about where we want to be. If we look at the fuel that we purchase, the energy that we purchase off of GRU, because 97% of our energy comes from GRU, if we look at the landfill gas and biomass, that 3% increases to something on the order of 29% of the county's fuel mix from non-fossil fuel sources. To meet the county's 2025 goal as a measure for success, if we just wanted to use PV, we're looking at an investment of around, this is a back of the napkin calculation, around $10 million and building 6.7 megawatts over about a 37-acre site. So fairly daunting to think about, I know, at one setting, but we're going to need input from the committee on how best to strategically come forward with the mitigation and adaptation strategies that are equitably distributed to the community. For regenerative agriculture, mitigation, agriculture is a net emitter of carbon emissions right now, but the county commission has seen the value in moving agriculture to a more local place and thinking also about the value of the soils themselves so that it acts as a sink, much in the way that our wetlands do for storing carbon. For regenerative agriculture, we're looking to maximize local resources of energy efficient food production and processing facilities. And as a measure of success, we need to think about how soils themselves, specifically engineered soils, can help us in reducing herbicide use in agriculture, avoiding water use, avoiding fertilizer and herbicide use is critical to maintaining ecosystems, but they're highly dependent upon fossil fuel inputs. And also on the resilient side, creating a greater institutional commitment to procure locally sourced foodstuffs. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gus Olmos to talk more about, speaking of waste reduction.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Gus Olmos, Alachua County Interim Solid Waste Director. So as you know, our solid waste management practices can have a very direct impact on climate change. So in an effort to come up with a consistent and comprehensive approach to dealing with the different waste streams in the community, county and city staff have been working together in the development of a joint zero waste plan. We've been able to meet pretty regularly with our consultant, and we are we're making advance on this effort. Just for those that are not familiar with the plan, it essentially has 4 parts. The first one is the development of a baseline study, basically to let us know These are the practices that we currently have in place. This is where we are right now. That baseline report was completed back in March. So we have done that. The second step is to come up with a draft strategies report. Essentially, just look at the baseline report, look for the gaps, come up with ways to fill those gaps, and come up with a way to kind of measure success. You know, how are we going to know when we're meeting the goals? I would say we're kind of halfway in the development of that report, that draft report. Once the report is completed, the next step is going to be to take this draft report into the community and get their input and get their feedback, and go from maybe some general ideas to some very specific projects. We were hoping to get this out to the community in mid-August, somewhere in there. Some of that timeline has to do with us finishing the report. It also has to do with the COVID situation. We're still hoping to get it done mid-August, but we kind of have to see, because the issue is how do we have access to stakeholders to get their input in the most effective way. Once we get the input from the stakeholders, then we're going to finish up the report and then move into the implementation phase. As you go through this material, I mean, you quickly notice that, I mean, there are no silver bullets. I mean, there are some new strategies and approaches we can take, but a lot of it is are things we're currently doing. We're already doing them. We just need to maybe do them more effectively, maybe do more of them, or maybe have different priorities. A good example is green purchasing. You know, that's something that the county and the city, we have some language, some level, something there, but there's more that can be done. And for example, in your package today, in the backup documents, it's a very specific suggestion from Zero Waste and from EPAC, the County Environmental Protection Advisory Committee, on how to do a better green purchasing program that we currently have in place. So that's what I expect is going to come up with the Zero Waste plan, is, you know, do more of what we're currently doing, do it better, and maybe some new ideas. And with that, I believe it's Steve's turn.
All right, thanks, Gus. I'll just mention briefly this final. Okay, we'll move on to the climate resiliency. Basically, mitigation alone is not going to move us forward in dealing with climate change. It requires the entire country, the entire world to tackle the mitigation issue. So in addition to mitigation, we need to be prepared as a community to be able to tackle the impacts that climate change is going to bring to us. We are already experiencing sea level rise along the coast, and that will just continue. So the area, one major example of resilience is in the area of environmental resiliency. Alachua County was recognized back in 2007 by local leaders in the built capacity and our ability to handle environmental resiliency. We received the National Association of Counties Best in Class for Environmental Planning in recognition local green infrastructure investment plan. And so tackling these issues at environmental level is kind of one of the bases for the county's approach to handling resiliency. Wetlands and floodplains and our water resource protection is become our #1 strategy in being resilient. Wetlands are capable of handling 81 to 216 metric tons of carbon per acre. And that depends again on the location and the type of wetland, but it makes it not only a place that's storing carbon, but it actually can be a carbon sequestration where it's actually taking carbon in. So it's both a mitigation strategy and a resilience strategy to help us with our flooding, our extreme weather events. And so making and guaranteeing the protection of our wetlands and our floodplain systems should be a major priority moving forward as the community grows. Other areas include our land acquisition program. As Sean had mentioned, we have over 20,000 acres of land we've set aside. These are natural areas that store water, store carbon, provide a natural functioning process to tackle this carbon issue. And then we have found our green infrastructure approach is much more resilient moving forward than a gray infrastructure concept, where it's a lot more expensive to correct and fix when your gray infrastructure is exceeded by higher flooding and rain events. Green infrastructure can be much more adaptable in many approaches and handling not only capacity in combination with other approaches, but also handling water quality strategies. And so we also have a stormwater assessment now along with the city, and we're utilizing some of those aspects to improve our infrastructure as well. We also are developing and looking into an approach to have a more holistic strategy to handle our stormwater that is both for total volume as well as water quality. And so moving forward, we know that water is going to be the driving force of whether we are a resilient community. Our water supply, without a clean and effective water supply, we will not be able to function as a community. So we need to have strong water conservation strategies, continue to find ways to reduce our water use and protect our springs, rivers, and our water supply systems so that we have both a clean and viable water supply moving forward. You can move on to the next slide. Sean, you want to cover some of these resilient strategies?
So part of getting from here to there, and again, we have to do this together. We can't have separate energy policy from the city of Gainesville and GRU, and we can't have a mobility and transportation policy without the city of Gainesville as well. And part of those efforts are ongoing. We have a very ambitious plan to increase transit opportunities, high frequency transit opportunities in the community that stitches it together and reduces the net amount of single occupancy vehicle traffic that's needed. Also, how we construct our communities so we make them less auto dependent is critical and constantly under review with the county commission. But we create a better community as we think about what a 21st century mobility and transportation network looks like that is not solely dominated by an automobile. And I know this is probably, this commission, these commissioners all know this, but the two big sectors that we must make a difference in if we want to move the carbon needle is within how we use energy in the built environment and how we use energy in transportation. If we cannot make effective policy that translates to master plans that then creates actionable items with our capital improvement elements, then we won't be able to adapt and have a community that can mitigate its obligations and have a resiliency for the future. Local food and regenerative agriculture are a big part of that, and how we think of resilient landscapes as well. You know, I talked briefly about agriculture and how soils, Stephen talked about it from a wetlands perspective, how the wetlands are acting as a carbon sink. I mean, I was first introduced to this concept by Dr. Stephen Mulkey, who's now back at the University of Florida. You know, the wetlands are really our tundra environment. It holds a massive amount of carbon. But if we start to think about agriculture, and we start to think about the soils and our landscapes themselves and the soils that go into that, if we were to begin to close the loop on our greenways and start to create engineered soils that our landscapes themselves and our agriculture themselves would hold floodwater, would not require herbicides and pesticides. We're creating a more resilient community. We're having to invest less energy to do more work while closing the loop on waste streams. And that really then relates back to, you know, shrinking those supply chains. Instead of thinking about, you know, importing foodstuffs from thousands of miles away, we ourselves become better at taking care of ourselves while supporting our own economies here. Next slide, please. And I think Stephen was going to cover some of the concepts on emerging equity and health concerns, because the benefits of policy aren't always equitably shared, the cost and the benefits. And certainly what's coming with a climate crisis, as we've mentioned before, it's going to disproportionately affect some of the most vulnerable in Alachua County and the state of Florida.
Yeah, our climate challenge and solutions can't just be about environmental resiliency and funding infrastructure projects. We can anticipate the climate change will result in more, not less, demands for social and public health services. Predominant climate change impacts influence health could be extreme heat, drought, wildfires, air quality, allergens. On the coast, it's sea level rise, which means we will see an influx of, or potentially an influx of citizens coming into our community that may be without housing, without healthcare. We can expect storms and flooding, and have problems with nutrition and food security if we're having these events take place on a very long-term process. So this is an area we can't ignore. It's vital to us being successful moving forward to be a resilient community is managing these stresses that we're going to feel in our society and with the citizens that are going to be most vulnerable. I think, like with the current pandemic we're in, the elderly and the poor are going to be probably most affected by situations where we have high weather extremes. And we're going to have to deal with housing shortfalls and homelessness, a large immigration of citizens from the coast. So these are areas we're going to have to tackle and be prepared to tackle moving forward. And so we can't ignore this vital aspect of our climate resiliency strategy.
Thank you, Stephen. So our challenges, as we think about where we're at today globally with emissions, we're pushing on 410 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere right now. In 50 years, we could be as high as 500. That equates to, on the high side, of probably about a 9 degree centigrade change in temperature. That's something that we haven't seen since the Jurassic. On the low end of the perspective, it's about a 1 degree change. However, that presumes that the world has vigorously begun efforts to mitigate the carbon emissions starting around 2010, which if you look at the Paris Accords, while we might meet some of our near-term obligations as a nation and in other countries, the long-term trajectory is that we're going to have impacts, and that's going to impact locally our transportation network. It's going to impact people in the community with extreme weather and droughts. It's going to impact how we live, how we move about in our communities. So next slide, please. So that's kind of where we're coming from for this first part of the presentation, is think about what the policy lenses need to be so we can focus our efforts and create a more resilient community to look forward. And as the next presenters come up from GRU in the city of Gainesville, I hope you see that there's some of the logic as we move from kind of the big policy side down to the more focused actionable items and what concrete steps that we have taken. Next slide, please. So moving from policy to master planning to action. We're doing these things. We're looking at our comprehensive plan. We're developing specific bike ped plans, stormwater plans, greenways and trails plans. And then every year we're allocating funding sources. But something that is going to be important specifically with climate action is we have to do an equity check. We have to think are the costs and the benefits being equitably shared? Do we have community support? Because some of the actions that might be taking, some of the investments, the public needs to understand and have an investment in themselves and seeing them succeed, or else we won't be able to get to where we need to be. Next slide, please. Stephen, do you want to take us out?
Yeah, thanks, Sean, and thanks, Gus, as well. So this is a repeat, a little bit of the first slide that you saw where we brought up the Climate Advisory Committee. This board has already taken action to move that forward in resolution, and hopefully at our next meeting in August, you all will be selecting the members of this advisory committee. We're committed to strengthening our climate policies and our comprehensive plan and look for direction from this group and the advisory committee moving forward. That hopefully will lead to an action plan, the climate mitigation and resiliency plan moving forward, which will give us those action items that can really make a difference, hopefully. And this is not going to work if we're not all working together. So we need to pull together the other agencies, the universities, the citizen advisory groups, the citizen climate groups out there, and really come together. I'm excited that the city and the county are moving forward together on this approach. I think we need to continue to get even larger, like the Southeast Compact, for instance, down in Southeast Florida, where they've got over 84 municipalities all dedicated to the climate change. So I think to be successful, we need to continue to grow and work together. Just as a final closing, I don't know, I think we might have one more slide. We do. I think one of the areas that staff is looking for is we're developing this climate vulnerability assessment. We're putting together what we think we would need to move that forward and possibly do an RFP to get an entity to work on this assessment. And basically the idea there is that we're going to target the most vulnerable areas of our community and our infrastructure to see what we really need to focus on to be a resilient community moving forward. And hopefully we in our action plan, we both deal on mitigation and resiliency. And again, we'll continue to update our comprehensive plan and move forward as we develop our action strategies. So with that, we're done at this point. If we'll be glad to answer any questions, or maybe we move it to the next presenters and then leave questions to the end. It's up to you.
So let's go ahead and see if anyone from the board has questions on this presentation, and then we can move on to the next one.
Chair?
Commissioner Wheeler.
Yes, sir. I appreciate Commissioner Santos including the outlying communities and making sure that that we are including them in these resolutions. And Stephen, when we talk about county, we're talking about county too, right? We're talking about the outlying communities as well as we develop these plans.
Make sure. Okay, I was afraid I was muted. Yeah, we are dealing with our comprehensive plan, but I think when we're talking about an action plan, it should apply to the municipalities and the county as a whole. Would be, I think, the most effective approach. Yes.
Okay, I'm good with that, because I know that Archer and High Springs occasionally have trouble with their water issues or sewage issues that affect the water, and so I just want to make sure that we have them in mind as well as we are moving forward, because what they do to our water affects all of us. And I think that focus needs to be on them particularly, and anybody else in the outlying area who may have water issues. Thanks, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Okay, let's move on to the next presentation. Ms. McElroy, who do we have presenting next?
We have Rick Hutton and Justin Smith from GRU presenting next.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Rick Hutton. Hey, okay, good. I will now hopefully go in and share my screen. I'm sorry, I'm not able to see how I can share my screen.
Kristen, can you help him with that?
Yeah, or if you can just pull up the presentation, I can just tell you to switch from one slide to the other, but I'm not seeing that I have the ability to do a screen share.
He's a panelist. He should be able to share his screen. Let me see.
Rick, I'm going to run down to your office real quick.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that.
All right.
Is what is the name of the presentation?
It would be GRU Climate Change Report. It's usually down here.
Hey, Rick, I can share it if that would be helpful.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Right
If you're set to do it, I'm not sure why
Yeah.
I can't, but if you don't mind, I'll just, why don't you go ahead and do that? And then, because I'm just going to do a slide or two, then you can speak. And then if you don't mind changing slides for me, that'd be awesome.
That sounds great. I think that makes sense too. All right. Hopefully it should come up here.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you. That's it. Okay. Thank you. This is Rick Hutton with Gainesville Regional Utilities. I'm with our Water and Wastewater Division. I'm going to say just a couple things to get us introduced, and then switch over to Justin Smith, who is with our energy supply side. He's going to talk to you about things that energy supply is doing, and then we'll switch back to me, and I will talk a little more about water. So Justin, next slide, please. So in terms of, and we're going to talk a little bit more about, sort of actions that we're doing to combat climate change or to deal with climate change. And so a lot of what we'll be talking about is, one is, of course, trying to reduce our carbon footprint. We have a goal of 100% renewable energy by the year 2045. Justin's going to talk about the things that we're doing right now to get towards that goal. I believe we are at 34% renewable energy at the time. Also, along those lines is trying to improve our operational efficiency and our sustainability in using resources. So obviously that includes energy, but also includes water and other resources. And lastly, it's not on my slide, but resilience, of course, is a really important thing that GRU is focused on. As you all know, we've with climate change, we will get more severe weather events and more severe weather events. And so we are continuously working to improve the resilience of our facilities, as well as how well we respond to storms and events. So I'm going to next slide, and then we'll switch to Justin for speaking.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Smith. I'm an environmental engineer. I work for GRU's Electric Utility Environmental Permitting and Compliance Department, which is quite a mouthful. But we work alongside energy delivery and energy supply to maintain compliance with environmental regulations. So I'm going to go through a number of projects that GRU has undertaken in the past, are ongoing and coming as well. And these projects can be generally kind of categorized into one of two categories. One is doing better with what we have through increasing efficiency. And then the other category is adding additional renewable energy sources to our mix. So the first one here, you can see GRU has been undertaking a mass change out of high pressure sodium lights for energy efficient LED street lights. In terms of progress in the project, we're about 3/4 of the way through that. If you categorize it by amount of megawatts saved compared to the total. So we're 75% through the total project with that. And the CO2 offsets associated with that are approximately 16,500 tons per year. Kind of in a similar vein, GRU has mostly completed the switch out of transformers. And so there is a industry standard minimum efficiency for transformers. And so there's power loss associated with transformer use. And GRU has proactively replaced these less efficient transformers for more efficient ones. CO2 savings associated with that project are approximately 20,000 tons of CO2 per year. Next project is the Solar Feed-in Tariff Program. Using 2019 data, nearly 20,500 tons of CO2 were offset associated with power generated from this renewable source. Next one is landfill gas. I'm coming from Marion County Baseline Landfill. That gas is used to generate electricity through some generator sets there. and the electricity from that source has provided nearly 22,000 tons of CO2 offsets. South Energy Center, there's a couple of units there that have heat recovery steam generators. The steam that is produced from the stacks for those units, that energy produces steam, and that steam is supplied to the adjacent UF Health Hospital complex. And so the CO2 savings is for that project is nearly 28,000 tons of CO2. For Kelly, similar to the South Energy Center, there is a heat recovery steam generator, which captures the waste heat produced from combustion turbine 4 there. And the steam turbine 8, which was repurposed back in 2001, is being used to generate electricity from that steam. And that power that's being generated from that waste heat is enough to offset nearly 151,500 tons of CO2 per year. And the largest of these past projects and ongoing projects here is Deerhaven Renewable. And so the renewable energy produced from Deerhaven Renewable in 2019 provided nearly 581,000 tons of CO2 offsets. Okay, and a couple of upcoming projects, which I believe many of you are familiar with. So the Utility Advisory Board, my understanding, is approved this agreement for bringing on board 50 megawatts of solar power from Miami-based Origis Energy. My understanding is there's also going to be battery backup for that power to try to keep it steady state production of power from that project. That project is anticipated to, hopefully with City Commission approval, come online by December 2022. And that's just another step towards our 100% renewable goal by 2045. And then the final project that was approved by the Commission last Thursday evening is this Deerhaven dual fuel conversion. So Unit 2, which is the coal-fired unit, is going to be converted to meet capacity. And there's really across the board emissions benefits associated with this project. Of particular interest here is the CO2 savings. And I know this plot is perhaps a little bit small on your screen, but there is nearly a 40% reduction in the amount of CO2 that's released per unit heat input for this project. And you can see the other categories here. We've got sulfur dioxide, mercury, particulate matter, and nitrous oxides there at the end. But there's just, like I said, a lot of benefits from an emissions standpoint associated with the implementation of this project. And that is what I have for this section. Unless there's any questions, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Jen McElroy.
I have just one question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yes. When is the Deerhaven conversion? When are you looking? What's the date for that? I think I missed it. When is this happening?
I am not certain when it's due to come online. It was just approved last Thursday, so I imagine a lot of the scheduling is kind of being finalized at this point. But I'm actually part of the team trying to get the necessary permits, air permits in place so that we can proceed with this. But yeah, I know, I believe everyone's moving ahead with it and trying to get it lined up and scheduled.
Okay, are we talking about a year or two, or just a ballpark?
I believe significant efforts are going to be made during next outage for Unit 2, but I would have to do a little bit more research and digging to give you a very clear answer.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the current plans are presented to the commission last week. Had it going, I think, fully live between Q3 and Q4 of 2021. So sometime late next year, it should go live.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wheeler, does that answer your question?
Oh, yes, sir, it does. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Okay, let's move on to the next section.
I'm sorry, Harvey. Yeah, I couldn't get my mute.
Yeah, Mike.
Just a quick question. Just a question about the final bullet point. How is this another step towards 100% renewable?
So if you remember from the beginning of the presentation, these projects generally fall into one of two categories. So this would fall into the category of doing better with what we have and being more efficient with what we have. Admittedly, this is a fossil fuel, but we do achieve a 40% reduction in carbon dioxide with it.
Okay, I see what you're saying. All right, thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, we often confuse, when we get deep into these conversations, we often confuse renewability with lowering the carbon footprint, and I think that's
right.
essentially what we did there. Okay, who's
okay, it will be me again, Rick Hutton, supervising engineer with GRU Water Wastewater. Justin, do you mind still doing the slides? I couldn't, I was unable to do screen sharing, so if you don't mind.
Oh, there was also, I forgot to mention this sooner, it wasn't included in the backup materials, but there is the renewable energy report that GRU put together, showing kind of the distribution of where our power is coming from, and kind of organizing everything neatly into a pie chart, which represented fiscal year 2019 power generation. Is that something anyone's interested in taking a look at before I hand it back over to you, Rick?
Excuse me, are you asking, or we're interested as to where this energy source is coming from? The gas?
I'm asking whether or not, okay. Yeah, let me bring it up.
That's a nice graphic that Justin can show, showing our renewable energy portfolio.
Yeah, and just in case anyone had additional questions, I could clarify. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so if you look at the very bottom underneath the blue slice of that pie graph, you can see renewables are just a little bit north of 1/3 of all our generation, which is great. I mean, we are leading Florida with renewable power generation. Unless there's any other questions, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Rick.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, Justin, if you can put on the slides again, that would be much appreciated.
You need the general government climate change impact initiatives. Is that the next one?
No, this is still GRU.
Still GRU.
Okay.
1 second to get back there.
All right, very good. You can go to the next slide, Justin.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we've already kind of talked about the impacts of climate change, kind of an interesting picture of, I think everybody recognizes that one, 441 after Hurricane Irma. Next slide, please. So you can kind of categorize our initiatives in water and wastewater under 4 kind of buckets. You know, one is utilizing renewable energy. So we don't produce our own energy, but we do buy energy from our energy supply side. So we're happy to take credit for their efforts to produce renewable energy. The other thing is, upgrading and improving our systems to improve efficiency, managing water resources, which I'm going to talk about in more detail, and then, of course, improving our system resiliency. Next slide, please. So, and I think we kind of covered this. Next slide, please. So in terms of, these are just some examples of projects and initiatives that help to improve and modernize our facilities. One is biosolids. So biosolids reuse is an important part of our efforts to be sustainable. As I think you all are aware, biosolids are a byproduct from the wastewater treatment process. We're able to work with a third-party vendor to produce a fertilizer product with our biosolids. and that is sold as a commercial fertilizer product, which helps to reduce the need for sort of conventionally produced fertilizers, which are pretty energy intensive to produce. Some other examples, the Main Street Water Reclamation Facility, we have plans. We're doing some major overhauls of that plant over the next 5 to 10 years. So we'll be retooling that plant with more modern equipment. And every time you make some improvements to equipment, you can put in more efficient improvements for more efficient equipment to improve your carbon footprint. Also with our Kanapaha Water Reclamation Facility, we're doing an optimization program right now to further improve what we have, with the idea, though, within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll be starting to do some major upgrades at that plant as well. Next slide, please. So water resources, something near and dear to my heart. So water conservation, of course, is a major effort that I've been involved with. Also really appreciate all the efforts of Alachua County and of the Water Management District and others in terms of water conservation. The other component of our overall water sustainability program, of course, is water reuse. So most of the water that we sell to our customers comes back to us as wastewater. We treat that water to produce reclaimed water and then beneficially reuse that water. And we're actually able to attain 100% beneficial reuse of that reclaimed water. And that's through a combination of targeted irrigation and cooling. So we provide water for irrigation and/or cooling to customers to help reduce the need for potable water. We do that on a targeted basis where it makes the most sense. Environmental restoration, which I'm going to talk about, the Sweetwater Wetlands Project. And then an area that we've been really involved with a lot as part of our water equation is returning that water to the aquifer via aquifer recharge. So next slide, please. So this just shows our a history of our water, overall water withdrawal at the Murphy Well Field, which is in the blue line. And the green line is our service area population. So that looks like it starts in around 1990. And you can kind of see from looking at the blue line that our water use peaked in about 2007. That is about the time that I think we and others really started ramping up conservation. So our tiered rates started kicking in 2007. You can see we were able to get people to reduce their water usage quite a bit over the last decade. We are currently on a per capita basis, which means per person. Our per person residential use of water is about 61 gallons per day per person, which is, when you compare that with the district-wide average for St. Johns River Water Management District, which is about 91 gallons per day per person. We're doing pretty well on a relative basis. Of course, there's always more work that needs to be done, but we have accomplished a fair amount in terms of conservation as a community. Next slide, please. So I never miss an opportunity to show our Sweetwater Wetlands Project. It is a project that GRU worked with the City of Gainesville Public Works to construct. And as I think you all are aware, essentially it takes reclaimed water as well as stormwater runoff and other sources of pollutants that enter Sweetwater Branch. All those are treated through our wetland system, and that water is ultimately used for environmental restoration for wetlands on Paynes Prairie. And although I said we don't produce any renewable energy in water and wastewater, I will say that this wetland is 100% solar powered. So next slide, please. Aquifer recharge, as I mentioned before, returning water back to the aquifer is an important part of our overall water equation. And one of the things we've been on the forefront on is constructing these aquifer recharge wetlands. And so what that really consists of is essentially constructing a man-made wetland in an area where you will have percolation that can recharge the aquifer. The wetland really serves as a dual function. So you put reclaimed water in the wetland, which already meets drinking water standards, but through the natural wetland processes, we're able to get particularly nitrogen levels down to very, very low levels while simultaneously recharging the aquifer. And so we've, go ahead and switch to the next slide if you can, please. We have several smaller scale projects that we've been operating for the last decade or so. We are, as I think we mentioned to both our city and county commissioners, we're doing a larger scale project that will be a 20 to 45 acre wetland that'll be on a 75 acre site off of Parker Road. So this is a project that we're proposing with cost share funding from the Suwannee River Water Management District and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. It will, by increasing aquifer recharge, it will benefit water levels in the aquifer, which will benefit Santa Fe River and associated springs. And we anticipate that it will be a public park. Next slide, please. Last but not least, of course, I mentioned improving system resiliency. I mean, we have a really large focus on replacing and upgrading aging infrastructure. And so these are just some examples. I won't read through all of them, but one area in particular I'll bring up is dealing with our wastewater collection system. And so we operate 800 miles of pipe, 15,000 manholes, and about 170 lift stations in our system. We do invest quite a bit, both in upgrading and replacing older infrastructure, both in our plants and in our wastewater collection system. Next slide, Justin. So this is just a photo of some of our contractors doing what we term as slip lining. So what they can do with an older gravity sewer line is they essentially put sort of a fiberglass resin sock on the inside of that pipe and are able to essentially produce a pipe within a pipe. So they're able to restore the functionality of a pipe and the structural integrity of a pipe through this sort of fiberglass insert. So there's quite a bit of focus in doing that type of work on our system every year, which also helps to reduce the amount of stormwater that gets into our system, which is obviously a big concern, both in terms of a routine basis, but when we have severe weather events, hurricanes, one of our biggest issues that we are worried about on our wastewater system is if you get flooding and you end up with stormwater in your wastewater collection system, that can cause sanitary sewer overflows, which is something we are working hard to try to reduce. Next slide, please. So kind of wrapping up, I think we kind of talked about our overall goal, environmental sustainability, resource sustainability, resiliency. The other element of resiliency that we didn't really mention, but is dealing with when we have hurricanes and severe events. I think GRU as a whole, not just water, wastewater, obviously, our electric side and all of GRU, we continue to work to improve the our abilities in responding to storms. So one example, is in addition to our frontline employees that are out in the field, restoring things and keeping things working, we have essentially a program where everybody at GRU, which includes folks that, work in finance or wherever else, they all have what we call a gray sky role. So there's really, when we have a large event, it becomes kind of an all hands on deck effort to respond and as well as provide support to the folks that are on the front lines responding. So a lot of effort in that regard. Also in working out mutual aid with other utilities. And that, of course, applies to water, wastewater, to electric, to gas, to all components of our operations. And that concludes what I have.
Okay,
Happy
any
to take questions.
member questions about this one? Comments? All right, let's move on to the next one.
All right, we'll have the City of Gainesville presenting next.
General government.
General government.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I didn't know they were going to share for me. It must be a tradition now. But this is Alice Rain-Keeler. I'm the supervising engineer with the City of Gainesville Public Works Stormwater Division. I have in the room with me Phil Mann, Public Works Director, Brian Singleton, City Engineer, and Michael Heimbeck, our Sustainability Manager with our Solid Waste Department. And Michael and I are going to present, and Phil and Brian are here to help us answer questions.
Very good.
I'll start off by talking to you about our hybrid fleet. Currently, all the city bucket trucks are outfitted with gym units, which allows them to run the boom and AC unit in the truck cabs by battery. And this greatly reduces the amount of idling that takes place as we work around the city in traffic operations in our forestry operations. Also, as our older fleet vehicles are being replaced, we're replacing the cars with hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles. RTS has an interest in replacing some of our buses with electric buses, and we currently have submitted a grant application for purchase of new buses that are electric. And the City of Gainesville also has an LED streetlight program. We've realized a large electrical savings from switching from metal lights to LED lights. In addition to the power savings, by making that transition, we've outfitted them with smart units. And so they're able to be dimmed in periods of the evening and night when they're not needed. The city operates smart traffic system in the city and in the county. And the purpose for that is to control the system so that idle speed is reduced by moving traffic throughout the area quickly.
Click right back on. Click back on it. No, right. Click on that.
All right.
Next slide.
Next slide. Michael?
Yeah, I'll just talk a little bit, add on what Gussie kind of talked about with zero waste and solid waste issues. Obviously, we are working with the county on that zero waste plan. Also, we've started discussions on working with the county on the collection contract, which is due up in late 2021. Specifically related to greenhouse gases, we hope to move towards more exclusivity in the collection of garbage. Right now, we've got a lot of garbage trucks running into each other out there on the streets, collecting essentially from the same locations. Also, as part of that collection contract, we're going to add some capacity by introducing carts to single family residents. We hope to improve multifamily recycling by adding consistency and capacity to that program. Additionally, right now we're working on a pilot compost, and as noted up in the presentation, we're moving towards a street sweeping composting program. Large amounts of waste goes to the landfill that is essentially dirt, leaves, and trash. So we're working to develop a program so we can reuse that material also.
Back to me. The city also implements an urban forestry program. We have a tree mitigation fund that we use to maintain a healthy tree canopy throughout the city. And this in turn reduces the amount of heat absorbed during the summer months, which reduces the amount of energy needed to cool buildings. With regard to the stormwater program, we're currently updating 2 of our watershed management plans, including Hogtown Creek, which is most of the city area, and Lake Forest Creek. And in those plans, we plan to include a repetitive loss analysis, which is determination of which structures and buildings in the city have been flooded more than once. And we'll also implement a future conditions analysis, which identify, in addition to what's flooding now, what would be flooding in the future. And part of the plan is to identify programs that are needed to reduce flooding. And we plan to include those projects in the Alachua County local mitigation strategy. And in that way, federal funding would become available should there be another federal disaster declared in Alachua County. And that concludes our very brief but broad overview of city programs. And we'll entertain any questions that anyone might have.
Good questions. Commissioner Wheeler.
Yes, sir. The urban forestry, is there a conflict between our building requirements and what we're trying to do in terms of canopy, and specifically looking at the new Wawa building up on 13th Street, up on that hill that's built right up to the street, and it is a hot, hot intersection. And I'm just wondering if there, you know, where is the conflict? There must be some kind of conflict going on when we're building things right up to the edge of the sidewalk and right up against the road where there is no place for trees to be planted. What do you think?
Well, we'd have to get, this is Phil Mann, Public Works Director. The person to answer that question would be somebody from our Department of Sustainability.
Okay, all right.
Sustainable Development. But in general, that site was 100% impervious prior to this reconstruction.
Right.
So I haven't seen the final product yet, but I have to imagine that they have to introduce some green space and some trees. But I know that our comprehensive plan promotes buildings built up to the back of the sidewalk. That's what our sustainable development pushes for in the city. And there's Dan.
Hello, Commissioners, County, and City. Dan Hoffman, Assistant City Manager for City of Gainesville. Phil Mann's right. Previously, there might have been some allowances. That was actually previously an impervious site, and I believe it was also a brownfield development that was remediated in order to accommodate the development. So a couple of things. First off, if there is any development has to abide by certain rules in terms of mitigation for tree loss. So in some cases, that is either a very steep payment of some sort to our tree mitigation fund, or they do have to make replacements if there is canopy loss in many cases. And that's normally applicable to what we call high quality trees. So there are certain invasives and things they don't have to replace, of course, but there are many steps in terms of the process. And we often get a lot of pushback from developers, who once they realize the cost of actually replacing, the loss of high quality, heritage trees. So I wouldn't say there's conflict. Now, in terms of the orientation of the building and its orientation to the street, in some cases that is determined by the particular zone that it's in. It's also determined by whether it's a city or a state road. And I believe in that section, it probably just needs to be in alignment with the rest of that particular stretch, which is obviously state road. So I wouldn't say there's conflict per se, but we do have one of the things that was not mentioned in the slide, and as I listened to the county presentation, I realized we should have included is we are actually about to embark on a rewrite of our comprehensive plan. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to now look for any possible conflicts that might exist as we go through our comprehensive plan and incorporate some of the principles you've heard about in the presentations today.
Thank you. Thank you. May I follow up with another question? I think what I'm thinking is if we are inviting new businesses and new development in the area, you're right. I don't think there were any trees there. If anything, it may have been old crepe myrtle or something. I can't remember from the furniture store that was there. But, you know, going forward, as we invite new businesses in and are really trying to somehow counter this heat that we're going to be seeing from all the concrete, if we could, you know, encourage people to maybe include that in their efforts, because it's going to be hot up on that corner. Maybe they'll sell a lot more drinks as people come up the, you know, the hill or on there, but it's a real hot spot and it's not very inviting anymore. You know, when all we're seeing is the sun bouncing off all that concrete. But I appreciate your help. Thank you. I understand what you're saying.
I think Commissioner A. Santos and then Commissioner Byerly.
Thank you, Chair. And to the Wawa on 13th Street, our code does require a vegetation tree strip. It's about 4 to 5 feet between the road and the sidewalk, and then the code requires a 5-foot sidewalk, and then also an area for kind of sidewalk cafes or whatever it may be in many of our areas. One of the main issues we run into is that the DOT, the Department of Transportation on the state highways, doesn't want, I think they have changed, I don't know, the rest of the state of Florida does it, but our district does not make that change, where they want trees. They don't want trees that are close to the road because they think that if a car will crash into it, then the car will get hurt, instead of if you have it closer to the road, then the people walking on the sidewalk will actually be safe because the tree will actually stop a car from hitting them. I know we have worked very hard on trying to make changes, and I think we've made progress on some of those areas. One of the other major issues we run into is the GRU utilities run where they run into. And that also has pushed trees along the street unless next to the sidewalk. And it's one of the things that drives me crazy. I do think you'll see 2 projects that I believe meet the new code. The new hub building on 13th Street that's like just north of the Publix, and then the one east of 13th Street. When those 2 get built, I believe they're going to have the trees and the sidewalk and all that, which should be to what you want. You're walking down the street and you don't have to be covered in it. I think that was my main thing. But the other thing, my turn. Sorry, it was my turn. The other things that I think we should, it's kind of discussed in the county side, was the zoning and the built environment. And denser areas do produce less carbon footprint. People they use less energy because there's walls on each side, so they share kind of the electricity, like the heating and cooling costs. They use less water. They don't have to water their lawns. And also there's a huge difference in transportation output too, because they can walk or bike. So I think that's one of the things too we need to look at is denser areas do help reduce carbon on a per capita footprint. If we can save our environmental areas and keep those safe and then densify the city areas, I think that's where we'll have a better bang for our buck in terms of reducing carbon. I think another major thing, and I saw it kind of on one of the slides in the county presentation, is I think the changes that we'll see from COVID of more people working from home and not having to drive to work. And I think that's one of the major things that touches a lot of is broadband access. Nationwide, for example, on 34th Street and Waldo Road is now not going to use that anymore. And that was, I think, close to 1,000 jobs that are now all going to be online. And so if we can have good broadband access, that means that people can work from home and be able to walk in their neighborhoods and not have to drive to work, taking a huge impact on reducing the carbon footprint. The other thing I think that's coming up on the city, and hopefully the county passes it after we do, is a rental housing ordinance that has a focus on making the rental housing in our city more energy efficient and reducing energy costs there as well on carbon footprint. And then the composting, which was discussed before, I think moving forward on a pilot composting program can be one of the biggest things that we can do to reduce methane output into the atmosphere is by composting instead of sending it to a landfill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Byerly.
Just speaking to Commissioner Wheeler's question, and a lot of the discussion now kind of captured it, but I guess the interface between trees and good urban design and cars and utilities is complicated, really complicated. And, you know, we chased this around and around for many years. It's instructive sometimes to find out specifically why we can't have vegetation in a given area. And I wonder if anyone present can tell us, are there any plans for any kind of shade type landscaping at the intersection that Commissioner Wheeler is referring to? And if not, can someone tell us what was it that stopped it? Was it DOT this time? I know when we have curbs, as we do, curb and gutter, usually that greatly relaxes DOT's objections to vegetation close to the road. In this case, there may just not have been enough room. It's an inherently unfriendly place for pedestrians, but then that's kind of circular reasoning. It's one of the reasons it's unfriendly is because there are no trees. So how do you begin making those incremental steps that get us there over a period of decades? And trees are important, I think. So can anyone tell us, are there any plans for trees there? And if not, what was the stumbling block? What was the obstacle?
I'll give it a shot, but I might have to follow up with you. But in looking at, I was just looking at the aerial and the overhead. We have that buffer in the block immediately to the west. It's in front of that wall where the street widens to start making accommodation for the turn lane. So and I'm making a bit of a guess here, but I think given first off the state and then the fact that the right of way gets reduced pretty dramatically at that point to make accommodation for the turn lanes. My assumption is that's why there was nothing required at that particular stage between the sidewalk and the street. Now, whether or not there are plans for some type of shade in the future, I'll have to double check if that was some type of requirement in the plan. But my sense is that it's just that particular transect was problematic, so there might not have been something in the right plan for the right of way. But I can double check on that and get back to the commission.
Thank you. That's all I have this time. Thank you.
Okay.
May I follow up? Yes, Dan, while you're looking at that overview, you see the back behind that, how many of those stations for gasoline there are? It's just incredibly that it's pretty overwhelming where we're trying to cut back on gasoline consumption, that there's all those whatever they're called to get gas. I mean, that area back in there is tremendous in terms of concrete, asphalt, whatever, and gasoline. You see that on there?
My aerial is not post, so I just see the site under construction. So unfortunately, the plan in front of me. I'm looking at the aerial and the current, which doesn't have the completed. So unfortunately, I can't.
That's okay. I just was thinking, even if they just pushed it back a little bit further, taking out one of those islands, you know, the gas things, you could push it back just a little bit, because there is no room for any vegetation except maybe grass, maybe a few shrubs, but that's it right there. I'm not trying to make a big deal out of that. I just was curious to see, you know, what takes precedent, what is more important, the vegetation or the building, and going forward, if there's some way that we can make the vegetation important.
And before we go back to Commissioner Santos, I want to say two things. First of all, we have a hard stop at 5 minutes till 5, so that we can move on to the next one. And I think we have another presentation here. There are lots of areas both in and out of the city limits where we could have this conversation. So it's a much broader conversation than just that one plot at 23rd and 13th, which again replaces an existing impervious area. So, Commissioner Santos, did you have further comments on that?
I was just going to say on that, the commission did give direction last year, and we still haven't gotten an ordinance back yet, but to changed our policy to create a hierarchy where we do kind of have our land development code, and then our public works, and then where the utilities are, so that we do create because right now it's in a conflict of just fighting all the time. And this way we can have a hierarchy where, yes, we want the trees to be there, and that's going to be our number one thing. We want it to look like that because, to Commissioner Byerly's point, it is 30, 40 years from now we see the effects of these. So hopefully we get that back soon. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. All right. Any more comments on this one before we move on to the next presentation? All right, let's move on to that next presentation, please.
And I do believe we are done with the presentations now, unless the county had anything else. There was something about a purchasing policy. I don't know if that was just in the backup or if anyone was planning to discuss that.
Anyone from the county?
Mr. Chair, this is Steve Hoster with the Environmental Protection Department again. We have that in the backup. I think Gus hit on some of the aspects of that in his presentation. At this point, we're continuing to evaluate that. We're working with our purchasing department as well and figuring out how best to approach the green purchasing strategy. So our hope is to bring this back to you as well as to our commission in the months to come. So we're going to continue to work on that. At this point, we don't have any presentation to go along with this.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any members with interest in talking about and making no motions we need or anything on this? Just informational. Commissioner Byerly.
Well, I guess now, after we've kind of heard these lengthy presentations on everything that we're trying to do now to meet the objectives of this committee that we have just revised, the question turns as to what is our work product going to be? What is our role? A lot of initiatives going on, good, but we're only going to get a presentation on them once now. So what do we do at the next meeting, and what is our role, if any? If we do nothing, certain things are going to happen in the next decade. We're going to do some things. I guess the question is, do any of us feel collectively that it's likely to be enough, or do we want to be more aggressive? And if we want to be more aggressive, what would it look like? What would the decisions point be? What are some of the things that we could do? And I don't think it would be terribly productive for the five of us to begin tossing out ideas, given the volume of material that was just laid on us. And there's a lot more, of course. That was the abbreviated version. It's more asking our staff, turning back to them, thank you for telling us what we're doing. Now, what if our sense of it is we need to do more, we need to be more aggressive, we recognize and accept there are trade-offs, sometimes there will be higher costs, sometimes there will be tough policy decisions. What are the things that we can do if we do want to ramp up our game more? And bring us back a dozen of those, a dozen of your ideas. This is something we were not planning to do because it would cost X, or we would have to sacrifice Y. Do you want to do it anyway? How important is the climate change issue to these two local governments, or these 10 local governments? And then we can have a discussion about those. Because if we don't really get to that next point of what are the additional things that we can do, even if it hurts, and tell us how it's going to hurt and let us vote and let us decide, then there's really nothing for us to do, I don't think. I don't want to just oversee monthly reports on what's going on. So those are my thoughts. I think the next step would be to kind of turn it back to our staff and ask them to do their best to come up with some of those additional decision points that haven't been done so far because there's been no political direction and because the budget does not exist, and ask the city commissions and county commission if they want to do more, and if so, here's what we think you can do, or here's what you need to make a decision on. So I'll stop there and see if you all feel the same. Maybe someone else has some other ideas for what our work product should be, but I think we need staff to bring us those tough decisions. There are no easy, obvious things we can do and just drift. Bring us the tough decisions where we need to take the next step. Let us know what's going to cost, and then we can have an eyes open discussion about whether or not we're prepared as a community to take those steps. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I agree. I agree with Mike.
I agree too.
Very good. All right, so looks like we'll look to hear from staff with good ideas, large and small, going forward. And certainly at our next meeting, we'll hope to be able to take action on the advisory panel as well. Larry, hold on just a second. We'll get through this item.
Okay.
If we get through without a motion, then we will we'll have general public comment in just a minute. Mr. Hoffman, did you have something to add?
I'll be very brief in the interest of time, but I didn't want it to go unstated that, obviously sometimes city, county, GRU, we have differences of opinions on things, but this is one of the areas that I've noticed in my time here that staff have worked incredibly well together. I mean, from working, whether it's solid waste issues, whether it's, the Sweetwater Wetlands Park, and this is one of those areas where staff have really built solid rapport, solid relationships. And I think between, whether it's coming up with ideas or just making sure that we're at least in sync and aligned, I think you can be really proud of your city and county staffs in whatever direction you give us moving forward in this area.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. All right. So I think we can move ahead to general public comment. And again, I'm going to set a 10-minute public comment on this, or 10-minute limit, because we do have to come back and talk about the next meeting date and all that. Commissioner Byerly.
May I just then ask what is the thinking of staff, what our next agenda would look like? Absent a motion, I'm willing to put a motion on the floor. I'm just not sure what we're going to talk about next time we meet.
So anyone from staff?
Since I was spoke up, I'm sorry, Mr. Hofstadter, please.
Okay, I was just gonna point out real quickly, obviously the selection of the advisory committee members will probably be the main first step. Following that, as maybe Mr. Hoffman was gonna say, staff can work together on some concept ideas and bring those back with you. I think that's the whole point of this action advisory committee, the citizen advisory committee, is to think outside of county government and city government and really just throw out the issues. And regardless of cost, I mean, they're not going to be worried about how much limitations of policy and rules and costs. They're going to say, this is what needs to be done. So I think that's why we need to get this committee moving. And in the meantime, we can continue to come up with strategies that we can focus on as well.
Well, thank you. That's really what I wanted to hear, is that you're going to bring us new ideas that can take us to the next stage, regardless of costs, regardless of current policy direction, which staff usually doesn't do that. They usually are much more focused on, here's our budget and here's what you told us to do in the past. So to take us to the next step, you're going to have to do something different. So if that's the way you're thinking, then I applaud that, and bring us work product. Force us to make tough decisions. That's what I'd like to have. Thanks.
Commissioner Santos, did you have something?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the zero waste draft plan will be done in August. Is that correct? That's our next meeting. It might be having a presentation of the draft plan to garner our feedback.
Yes, we already have the baseline report, so I can send that to you. And then by August, we should have at least a draft product ready. Yes.
I think that would be something good for us to discuss. That's one of the biggest things we can do in the short term to make impacts on climate change as well. Other thing, I don't think we actually adopted or approved our minutes too, so I think we'll have to do that too, I think. Maybe we did.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved.
Second. All right, and is there any public comment on the minutes? Larry?
No, there's no public comment on the minutes. There's a speaker standing by.
Okay. I will ask for Ms. McElroy, if you will do a roll call for us, please.
I will. Commissioner Byerly.
Yes.
Commissioner Wheeler.
Yes.
Commissioner Wells.
Yes.
Commissioner Hayes Santos.
Aye.
Commissioner Ward.
Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. And we will move to public comment, Larry. And Larry, once again, let's cap this at 10 minutes so that we can make sure.
Yes, sir. Yeah, as of now, we just have one speaker on the line named Hannah Bunkin, and she should be there. Ms. Bunkin?
Hello, hi. Can you hear me?
The floor is yours. Yes.
Thank you. Hi, yes, this is Hannah Bunkin. I wanted to briefly speak to the Deer Haven Unit 2 dual fuel project, more or less as it relates to the issue of climate literacy within the UAB, the City Commission, and GRU. I was unable to call in Thursday to provide a comment as I watched the vote unfold due to a broken phone, but fortunately, I'm here now. And so I actually do study climate science and governance, and am also a part of the generation that will more or less bear the burden of the decisions that are made by our elected officials today. And so I wanted to bring to the attention of everyone on this meeting right now some deep concerns I had with the way that this proposal was framed and what I believe was a lack of extremely pertinent information to base that decision upon. So GRU made 3 claims to support this project. 1, that it would reduce the cost of fuel. 2, that it would reduce our emissions, which they claimed would be about 40%. And 3, would move GRU towards the goal of 100% renewable by 2045. Now, the claim that it would move us towards 100% renewable was based on the fact that it reduces emissions based on the resolution that was passed. There's language in there that supports that. So basically what we're looking at is interrogating the claim that it reduces emissions. Now, the only reason GRU was able to claim a 40% reduction in emissions is because they completely ignored the upstream and downstream emissions associated with the extraction, transportation, and processing of natural gas. There has been basically a mountain of studies in the last, basically since 2009, that have looked at the leakage rates from natural gas. And I probably don't have time to go into the details here, but based on the best climate science, the leakage rates of methane actually will, due to these methane leakage rates, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little confused myself. What we are doing, we are spending $12.5 million to actually increase our greenhouse gas emissions. We're not reducing by 40%. We can only claim that if we're looking at the emissions that are burned at, or that are produced when we're combusting these fuels at Deer Haven. In fact, when you look at the entire supply chain, we're actually increasing our emissions. So I want to know, how do we address this problem of climate science illiteracy, and how can I be assured that the commissioners will be, brave enough to admit when they don't know something, and to wait for, and to, hold off on a vote like that is so critical, because this is not good. So I'm sorry. I will end my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry, anyone else?
Yeah, Commissioner, we do have one additional caller. This is Wallace standing by on the line. Wallace, if you're there, please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Wallace. I am really appreciative of the staff bringing up this presentation. I was here during the whole call, and I really appreciated them bringing up the topic of equity when it comes to climate change. I think a lot of times that gets lost when it comes to climate change. And when we're talking about people on the front lines and how they're going to be disproportionately affected by climate change. So my recommendation to staff, but also the commission who is going to be appointing people to this board, is to keep in mind of diversity, equity, and anti-oppression, and all these things, because we need a multiracial, cross-class board to tackle the issue of climate change. That's the only way we're going to have equity within our community. It's the only way we're going to really solve this, if we have community buy-in, if we have a very diverse cross-class board that are giving suggestions to the board. I think y'all know that. I just wanted that to be named because the staff named it, and I don't think anybody in the board named it. We really desperately need that. If we are going to be really serious about tackling climate change, everybody needs to be on board. I really appreciate it. I think it was Commissioner Hayes Santos talking about getting the rest of the municipalities to buy into this. I also think that's really important because there are also issues when it comes to climate change. It's going to affect everyone. So I appreciate the board taking this seriously. I look forward to seeing what goes on during the appointment process. I know, a lot of people are going to be interested in this. I just really hope that you take in consideration about, getting everybody's voices involved in this process. And with that, I yield my time.
Thank you for calling. Anyone else, Larry?
And no, sir. That's those are the only two callers.
Okay. Member comments? Nobody? Okay. I am going to ask if it's possible that we do the next meeting. We're scheduled for August 24th. If it's okay with the rest of you, I would really like to start that at 2 instead of 3, because we always push right up against the next meeting. And I feel like there are things we often don't get done or don't get said because we're always up against it. How do we feel about that?
I'm fine with 2 o'clock.
Fine with me. I think we imposed that discipline on ourselves to make sure we had a shorter meeting, but you're absolutely right that all too often we end up leaving ourselves with insufficient time to discuss adequately. So I'm okay with it.
Very good. Okay. So that's direction to staff. Please plan us for August 24th, 2020 at 2 p.m. And we will, I think, be live then, unless the governor does something different. We will not be on Zoom for the next meeting. So I assume we'll be at the county administration building. Okay, we are adjourned.